Welcome to the North Carolina Botanical Garden. I'm Joanna Massey-Lalikas, and I'm the Director of Learning and Community Engagement here at the Garden. In the back of the room, I have David Michaud, who's co-moderating with me to support the Zoom audience, so we welcome everybody who's with us on Zoom as well. So I'm really excited to have our special guests with us today, Bland Simpson and Cary Simpson. So Bland Simpson is the Keenan Distinguished Professor of English and Creative Writing at UNC Chapel Hill, and he is the pianist for the Tony Award-winning string band, the Red Clay Ramblers, and has collaborated on musicals like Diamond Studs, Full Moon, Kudzu, and King Mackerel and the Blues Are Running. Bland has received several prestigious honors, including the North Carolina Award for Fine Arts, the John Tyler Caldwell Award for the Humanities, and 2 Chapman Fellowships at UNC's Institute for the Arts and Humanities. He's originally from Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and his writing often focuses on the state's coast. And he's lived in the Piedmont now for 50-some years. And so the book that you'll hear about tonight is about that journey in that place, which is really fitting for this garden that's really about people, plants, and place. Cary Simpson is a distinguished photographer and environmental advocate with a career spanning 30 years. She has made significant contributions to both national and North Carolina environmental organizations, and also served as the Associate Dean for Development at UNC's School of Government, where she was honored with the Chancellor's Award for her outstanding service. Currently, she is a Senior Associate with Moss and Moss Consulting, where she continues to leverage her expertise in development and environmental advocacy. So with that, I'd like to invite them up to share their stories with you. Please join me in welcoming them.
Thank you, folks, for being here this afternoon or evening, as you prefer. We're going to show you a few pictures. I'm going to read you several short passages from this book and take whatever questions you might have and try and answer.
And we just wanted to point out, as before Bland gets started, what you're looking at here is a foggy downtown Clover garden. So this is this is our downtown in our little community, and Bland will introduce you to it.
Truth in packaging. We didn't know that our community was named Clover Garden for the first 30-some years that we lived out there. We did know that Clover Garden was the code name of a road, Clover Garden Orange Chapel Road between NC 54 and the old Greensboro Road. But that's a road and a church named Clover Garden. But community was a happy accident. One day I was holding William Powell's and Mike Hill's Gazetteer, North Carolina Gazetteer, and my eye just settled on the top left corner of the page, and it said Clover Garden, a community in southwest Orange County. That caught my attention, and the proof of community was post office here, 1808 through Civil War. So a post office, therefore an anchor of the community, had been established there when Thomas Jefferson was still president and ran through much of the 20th century. 19th century, no one had ever mentioned this to me. I simply didn't know, and wouldn't have known it had I not settled on that single line. I'm glad it was the very one at the top left of the page. So I was working up the text for this book that Anne graciously accepted the challenge of illustrating. This is our 5th collaboration. And there was going to be 30,000 words of Clover Garden and then a lot of stuff from around the state. And the UNC Press, my editor there, Mark Simpson-Voss, said, let's keep the focus on Clover Garden, a representative Piedmont community. It's not really a village, but it is a community. And that was someone else's idea. It's always hard to get next to, not your own. But it didn't take me very long. It took me about 24 hours to say, this is great. This is great. I've already written 30,000 words. I'll just go for some more, and I'm right here. And the coherence of it was really what Mark was after, and the close focus. And he came out one day soon after that. I said, let's talk some more about this. And we rode around, and I said, this is such and such a corner, and this is that tree. And so it was great that he counseled me that way. I'm deeply appreciative. Clover Garden. Clover Garden is a small 4-square-mile country community in the old Porter tract of the lower Old Fields, lying beside the Haw River just a few miles west of Chapel Hill in Carrboro, North Carolina. Patches of contoured red clay furrows in southwest Orange County in the state's foothill, growing corn and soybeans and hay and winter wheat, though once also cotton and tobacco, alongside dairy cows, beeves, and horses in pastures, meeting deep forests of white oaks, and red oaks, and pines, copses of them around country churches, and straight up tulip poplars and high-crowned hickories, American beech, and always sweet gum. Muscadine vines everywhere, willows close to the waterlines of ponds, where big blue herons stalk and hunt, ponds full of bass and brim, shellcrackers and pumpkin seed, and catfish prowling the bottoms, and dogwood and redbud fringing the woods with white and a pinkish lavender in early spring. All the waters of these lands draining away, often just after the rains, have revealed Indian points and potsherds in our gardens, ironic unintended gifts of the natives, the first peoples. Draining into the dendritic headwaters of the Cape Fear River, and after flowing 200 miles out past Oak Island and Bald Head to Frying Pan Shoals, where Long Bay and Onslow Bay meet and form the Atlantic Ocean. So that's where we are, extreme southwest Orange County. To be a citizen of Clover Garden here in the Old Fields, to be a part of its membership has been and remains a great wonder in my life. And what follows are stories from within that wonder, some of them at least, as I have seen them go down and heard them told, of hounds belling in the night, of turkeys slowly crossing our little field, and a family of golden skunks drifting as one down the slope of our woods, of cattle out of their fencing and parading up the road at midnight, of hay setting itself afire in a barn, of bonfires climbing high into the New Year's nights, of young men and old stepping and slipping over creek bed stones at Eastertide in search of suckerfish, of women, young and old, turning and shaping pots on wheels in the deep woods, or quilting old patterns or designs out of their own minds, and of men and women treading the forested lanes together in all seasons, scouting, as one old man called it, seeking and finding the simple pleasures of being out as dusky dark settles over the land, all out in the gloaming to see, through the years, what is moving and what is not. Those whom we know and have known in this countryside have found many a blessing out here, watching standing deer and deer watching them right back, have counted these blessings, and then quitting their counts only when the numbers just got too high, and those blessings, having found us, then dispersed, floating up into the crowns of tulip poplars and loblollies and beyond, into the clouds that course over us from west and southwest, and on above them into the bright and timeless evening stars and the planets, Venus and Jupiter and Saturn and Mars, and the mythic shapes that are real beings to us, Orion and Scorpio, and the big and little dippers, and every other creation in the true wild blue yonder. From a distance so endless and so divine that we shall never know it, rolling across our skies every single night in the endless scroll of years. That's the I guess, macro, the overarching nature of things as we've seen and felt it, and that kind of sets the theme for what this book is all about. Sweetheart, you want to show some pictures?
Just look at a few pictures of Clover Garden, and we've got a story or two about some of them. You just went from downtown to uptown in Clover Garden. This is just west of our house, one of the most beautiful vistas that there is in Orange County, I think, looking over Morrow Mill Road out towards Saxby-Hall and Mebane. And then this is our neighbor, Lester Ray, who is at the Twin Branch farm, which used to be a dairy farm. And his specialty these days is doing demonstration plowing with draft horses. He has these 3 beautiful black Percheron horses, and he gathers enthusiasts from all over the county, several counties, every year in November, and invites people to come see how the horses are harnessed, how the plows work, and just watch them work in a field across from his farm. You want to add anything?
Yeah, we thought, we've seen them doing this for years and years in early November. And we thought, not pejoratively, we just thought it was kind of a closed circle, not exactly a cult, but we never stopped. We slowed down, but we never stopped. And then about 2 years ago, all of a sudden, across the highway, Lester's farm, there was a parking sign with an arrow. So we thought, oh, they want us to stop.
We can go.
It's not a closed club.
Yeah, so it's been a wonderful afternoon, seeing all the horses. They had oxen also doing plowing. I'd never seen oxen harnessed before. This is also not far from Lester's farm at White Cross School. Glenn will tell you about this picture.
Yeah, the White Cross School was just a standard old school. I think it was just elementary. But anyway, it's at White Cross. It's very near the Fiesta Grill. And it's been a lot of things over the years. For much of 10 years, it was Bill Hipp's studio. He did a lot of busts of well-known people, Sam Irvin and Albert Coates and Paul Green here. And I was over there one time. My landlord who sold me the land where we built our house, Eric Shopler, was getting a bust made of his older son. And he asked me, he said, "You want to ride over here and meet this really cool guy, Bill Hipp?" And I'd heard about him. I said, "Sure." So I rode over there and felt like I'd been transported into 19th century New York or Paris artist studio. And I thought, this is great. I was living out there writing songs in the woods and all. And I thought, artists out in Bayham Township. We'll be great friends. Never saw him again in my life, which is probably my fault. He was out there for a long time, and he later fell on hard times, and he disappeared and is believed to have died or been done in New York sometime in the 1990s. A very sad story because his talent was just astonishing.
All right. Now we're taking you back into the neighborhood. This is Midtown. You've been downtown, you've been uptown. This is Midtown for us. Big tobacco barn, hay barn that's been a fixture in at our intersection on the way to our house forever. And then this is, as you go down the road to our house, the Shopler's Pond. And Bland has a story about that one.
Very brief one. Eric Shopler, we live about not quite a quarter mile from this little pond. Eric got tired of just having the stream run through the middle of the land there, so he put an earthen dam on the far side and got a 2-acre pond out of it and stocked it with brim and bass, and got tired of the brim and bass after a couple of years. And Eric was a great salesman. He asked me if I'd like to go in with him on a trout aquaculture business. And I said, what? He says, we're gonna put trout fingerlings in a mesh cage at the end of that dock and feed them up from November to February, and then in early March we'll seine the lake with a big seining net, and we'll have a community trout fry. What do you think? I said, well, okay. And a big storm came along in January, 2 months after we put the fingerlings in the cage under the dock, and it floated the fish and the cage under the dock, and it knocked open a little door that kept them in. that I opened to drop feed in every night while I was a trout tenant farmer. And so they all got out. And I don't know why, I didn't know enough about trout to know they don't like turbidity. Well, they don't like dirt in turbid water. And that's all a catfish pond really is. So I didn't question the proposal well enough. And I was sorry for those little trout that I'd been feeding, but I didn't mind getting out of the trout farming business, which is a non-existent business in Piedmont, North Carolina. That's just the truth of it.
And we're going to stay on the water theme for just a minute and show you that Clover Garden actually has reach beyond the Piedmont.
You're looking due east from a point at Marshallburg down in Carteret County. And the man at the stern there is Bill Garlick, Dr. Bill Garlick. He's our immediate neighbor to our north. And he also has a place down on the coast, and so do we, and not too far apart. So Bill comes down late one afternoon, and says, "Bland, I got an idea." He puts all these plans down in front of me. It's a boat. And I said, "What's the idea?" He said, "I think we should build a couple of these little skiffs for our daughters. Not for ourselves, but for our daughters." And that sounded so tender and so sweet. But at first I said, "Bill, I've never built a boat. I've spent a lot of time around boats, but I've never built one." He says, "Well, we're even then. I never have either." Well, he has a big shop and knows his way around power tools, which I did not before we started. We built two of these. We did the pieces. We do one, and then we do the same action on the next boat. And these are 11.5-foot Bevins sailing skiffs. The plans come from the Alexandria Seaport Museum along the Potomac, and beautiful little boats. They were very lightweight, 3/8-inch marine plywood, until we got them, built and started putting epoxy from West Marine, and that's heavy stuff, and then paint, and these nice little lightweight things. You could almost hold them in one hand. Became extremely heavy and hard to move. So we put the gunnel rail there, and anyway, they're both down in Carteret County. We're going to have a regatta this summer, and that's the story. But they were built in Orange County.
In Clover Garden.
In Clover Garden.
Yeah. Okay.
A couple paragraphs about beach. When a week of February rain comes, as it has during the moment of the full snow moon, the deep woods are dark gray and foreboding. One may feel portioned off, isolated, as Major Despain's bear hunting crowd was in Faulkner's fictional Big Woods in The Bear. Only the beech trees and their marinescent leaves, looking like sand or wheat, bring light to such dark, wet woods, standing out vividly among the dark gray oak and hickory trunks and the cyanine green of the cedars. A few of our beech trees are large and well spread out, but many more are saplings, 6 to 12 feet high, present and proud, and serving as fine, multifaceted reflectors. And now we're back again in February, and I see the beech trees from where I sit as the only glow in the foggy, rain-misted woods. A truly remarkable sight, because they hold their crisp blonde dead leaves after fall's fade and hold them over the months between November and February. The beech rattle in the cold breezes, and ironically and alone in all the forest, shine on and shine out all winter long, and so glowing, offer us light and hope and timely faith that spring will, as always, come again soon. We looked at these trees for years and years and years and just didn't think a whole lot about them. And then it seemed like one day, one autumn, we just fell in love with them for the light that they keep. And it's a cheer.
And you probably see things like this in your own neighborhoods. We've lived now in Clover Garden. I've been there over 30 years and Bland almost 50. Yeah.
What was the word you used to describe the leaf?
Marinescent. The dead leaves, sort of under and around near the dead leaves, are these marinescent, the brown, they're rolled up, they're coiled tightly. And that's what unfolds in the spring. That's what that
Thank you.
kind and nature is.
We've had a great time. We walk every evening whenever we can at home. And so just over the years, we've seen little things. We've noticed the beech trees. We've watched the leaves as they begin to come out in the spring, see them when they emerge from all of the fall foliage as the winter starts to come on. And there's some little bogs and seeps all up and down our road, and Adamasco lilies come out in the spring. So now, when the spring comes on, we're looking for the lilies. We're looking for little windflowers, which are teeny tiny little things. There's some right out near the entrance of the botanical garden under the cedar tree out there. And these grow right up next to our gravel road. These tiny little delicate things growing almost in the gravel. And every time the road gets graded, we have to go back out and see how many of them still survive. But they've managed to do that for years. They hang on and have propagated. It's wonderful to see these little icons of your neighborhood come and go in different seasons. And there is a season for everything, even old.
That little windflower community is about 6 feet or 8 feet by about 20. And there may be other iterations of it back on these lanes that we walk, but we haven't seen them. And they're wild iris that grow in 2 or 3 places, much larger communities than the windflower. But we look for them, and we forget every year exactly when they bloomed last year. So was it before the 10th of May, or was it the second week? And of course, they don't bloom at exactly the same time, but so we have much to review and discuss these tiny matters. This is probably a familiar sight to most of you. Pig cooker. Well, it's a grill, a stove, and we used to gather up about a dozen of them. This was everybody's favorite. In the Orange Grove community, we were raising money to oppose the Cane Creek Reservoir. This was a movement that the dairymen and women promoted, and we failed to stop it, but we did get considerable environmental concessions as it was being designed. But that community really cohered around these Christmas holiday cooks and spring cooks, where we'd pull 13 of these cookers together, put them in a horseshoe formation, and then cook pork shoulders all night, and then sell them all the next day. And we cooked in the middle of the night. We cooked chickens, and we cooked oysters and all sorts. We had a great time. And anyway, this one was named Centurion, since it was the biggest and grandest and had the best ventilation. Some of the stoves were so tight that when you closed them up after putting coals in them, they would start to go out and not keep consistent heat. And I never saw a thermometer anywhere near these cookers. You put your hand on top of them, and not for very long. But the hand test was what told you that you had, or if you had enough heat. That's all I ever saw, and we always did.
What kind of environmental concessions did you get?
I think it was mainly more protection of the shoreline and of the watershed. And also, even though there were people lobbying for it, there were going to be no gasoline engines.
Okay.
It was the same, which was the same protocol as University Lake, because it was the same operation. But everyone knew that, but there was still some lobbying, you know, it's a much bigger lake than University Lake, open it up to gasoline, but that didn't happen. So Dan Oaken was right. It was a very good place to find and keep clean water for the community in town. It just, I'm proud of the effort we made. I was sorry at the time we lost, but I think it was inevitable that this town needed that water.
And what you're seeing here is the Anna Lorak Farm, looking from Orange Grove Road across towards Dairyland Road. And to us, this is just another one of those iconic things. When we think of the landscape of our community, we think of this scene that we've gone past, you know, thousands of times in the time that we've lived out here. And it, you know, very much like Lester Ray's dairy farm and the Nutter Farm at Maple View, which has been a dairy, but now has been turned into muscadine grapes. If you've been out there recently, it's all grapevines, which is a big change from the dairy. But the Anna Lorak Farm was run by the Cheek family, I think.
Snipes.
Snipes family. And excuse me, it was just recently sold. So it's going to be developed. Excuse me. But we're hoping that a lot of these fields will still be rented to farmers, even with the houses that are going to be built in the wooded parts of it. So, you know, changes come, and communities change along with it.
This equine we call the guardian because he looks after all these sheep over on the old Greensboro Road. And he's a bit skittish. He's very protective of them. But if he runs, they run. So Ann worked, she had to go over there a number of days before they formed up and didn't run at her approach with the camera. And there he is. They've retreated to a deeper, behind those woods, field or something. We haven't seen him out there lately, but this is just a lovely, almost prehistoric. There's woven wire, so it can't be, but just a wonderful item, and just the kind of pleasure that you have out in the country to be out and about. And there stands the guardian. Well, we're going to close before any questions you might have. I want to read. One does have to leave the paradise of the sheep fields and the windflowers and so forth and go earn a living somewhere. And part of my employment, when I'm not on the campus of UNC, has been playing music out and about around the North America and Europe and the Middle East and Africa with the Red Clay Ramblers string band, which I've been doing since 1986. And I worked with them before I became a bona fide touring member. Many concerts are quite similar in our repertoire and in the way they go into the crowd. This one stands alone. And it's right here down home in North Carolina. Charlotte, Saturday night. We Red Clay Ramblers were once to perform for a Southern Conference of Recreation Directors as the closing event of their Saturday banquet, held in the large hall of one of the main hotels in Charlotte. And so we appeared, loaded in, and set up in the late afternoon of an autumn day. A little after 8 o'clock, we took the stage and powered out our rousing opening number, the Saratoga Hornpipe and a Hoedown and Fisher's Hornpipe, a musical amalgam that we have for years called the Mile-Long Medley. At the medley's spirited conclusion, the crowd of about 300 roared. These were folks who were professionally upbeat. They plied their come-get-in-the-swim wares on cruise ships, in hospitals, at town parks, at camps and schools, and they knew how to insist that everyone in any group join in for shuffleboard or singing and dancing, exercise, water ballet or water polo, even thumb wrestling. Anything active that demanded participation Here were gathered the very people who could coax any group's performance onto a higher plane. They roared, they whistled, they said incomprehensible things and threw their arms up into the air. They drank at will. They had a hard time sitting in their seats and did not want to. So some of them stood and twisted and shook in place to the hearty cheers of others. And this response was just to the first musical number of a 75-minute show. As we played on, the recreation directors, a group fairly evenly made up of women and men, sat energetically dancing with their hands at tin-top cloth-covered tables, performing for each other no less than we were performing for them. The centerpieces, which we had admired as they were being set out before dinner, were eye-catchingly colorful, crafted to represent the symbols of our state. A green pine bough, a branch of dogwood in flower, some cotton with the bowls cracked open, a few blood-red cardinals for good measure, all of these symbols made of paper. The recreation directors were an overly friendly audience, singular in their kinetic, extroverted, can't hold back way, unused from lifetimes of moving and leading merely to sit back and watch someone else move and lead. Here they had been sitting in Charlotte hotel conference rooms for several days, watching slideshows and listening to industry favorites preach a gospel of good fun and full-throated participation. And now, likely after too long of a cocktail reception and too much free-flowing wine at dinner, they were primed, to put it rather mildly, and our highly rhythmic string band music was all the powder keg they needed. During our fifth or sixth song, from the stage, we saw a huge plume of flame rise up at the back of the room. Someone had set a paper, cotton and cardinal centerpiece afire. Most of the room facing forward toward the stage did not see this flame, nor see it settle right down almost as quickly as it erupted, for that back table's folks, having had their playful moment, quickly put it out. As far as they were concerned, no harm done. And we, the band, played on. Played on for another scant minute, till just enough smoke rose and found a smoke detector and set off the hotel's fire alarm, a set of noisy, grating buzzers that, following every few buzzes, sounded out a robotic man's recorded voice saying, "Everyone, please leave the room now." And did they? What the finest recreation directors of the American South did was quickly look around, decide that there was no fire, thus no danger, and that this accidentally triggered fire alarm was an occasion to co-opt the performance, to play with each other, to sing and to dance. In seconds, their laughter, their screams and squeals of delight, their joyful leaping out of their seats with attendant chair banging, all drowned the band out, and we ended our song. Just then, the recreation directors, led by several enthusiastic, hip-shaking contortionists at the front of the room, started clapping and, finding an insouciant rhythm in the fire alarm man's droning voice, began to sing along. "Everyone, please leave the room now. Everyone, please leave the room now." These wondrous beings overrode the alarm man's drone and treated him as a rapper and gave him a Latin beat. And almost at once, they formed a conga line and began to dance as they sang. Every one of them, all of them, gained a hold on the love handles of whoever was hip-shifting just in front of them and shook and shimmied, swayed, and swooned through this grand hotel ballroom, the best Charlotte, the Queen City, could offer. Hundreds of them passionately singing as if they had known this song all their lives. "Everyone, please leave the room now. Everyone, please leave the room now." Yet they would never leave this room. They were too happy. However this had happened, the Southern recreationists were in their element now. They were shouting and shambling their conga line, snaking around the big space, and we could see from our vantage point on stage that this show, for which we were now the small audience, might just go on forever. And that was exactly when a fully decked out squadron of the Charlotte Fire Department entered all the ballroom side doors. Axes held aloft, every one of them suddenly stopped, stock still, standing in awe, astonished, aghast. "Everyone, please leave the room now." The immediate impulse of the recreation directors, a platoon of them, was to break briefly from the conga line, rush to the firefighters, rush into this line of axes, and to reach out and entreat them to join the inebriates' dance. Now, the firemen were not at all amused. "Exit the room now," they exhorted. Exit the room now, sang the recreation directors as they slowly shimmied for the doors. Exit the room now. The firefighters seemed tensed to the maximum, as if they all wanted to shake their big red axes seriously at this foolish assembly. We ramblers dutifully took up the rear, following along down a couple of flights of stairs. Everyone, please leave the room now, echoing loudly in the stairwell, and then on out into a surface hotel parking lot where the mild chill of fall damped down the dancing and singing, and the conga line fell apart into its constituent pieces. The rec directors looked about, disappointed that no bar awaited them out here in the lot. After about 20 minutes of milling around desultorily, we all returned to the ballroom, from which the firefighters had removed every single one of the paper centerpieces, and we resumed our show. Because the firefighters had moved into the scene and done the party in, a good bit of attrition had set in, as many of the rec directors had headed for the hotel bar, and there was no longer an exuberant spirit in the ballroom. During the applause between a few of the numbers, someone would shout, trying to re-rev up things, "Everyone, please," and get a slight laughter and mild emitting from the remnant crowd. For the starch had gone out of the soiree and the evening. The red paper cardinals had flown away for good, and I would soon be on the road back home with a new tale to tell Anne of sophisticated Charlotte, back through the dark Uwharrie Mountains to Clover Garden, just 2 hours away by midnight, a singular evening, early yet. I've had special feelings for Charlotte ever since. We have had a great long career with the string band, and I can legitimately tell you and swear on the stack of Bibles that we have never had a show, an evening that went anything like that. That was extraordinary. And it happened in North Carolina. Thank you again for being here this afternoon. If you have any questions about our take on things, Clover Garden, please let us hear them.
Yeah, please let me know if you have questions. I'll bring the microphone over to you. If you're online, please feel free to post a question in the Q&A.
Can I get a book in the gift shop?
Oh, you are welcome to head on over there if you'd like. Yeah. Okay. David, anything back there?
I guess I have a question.
Okay, we have a question.
A little more history about the background of Clover Garden. Did you go back and research that at all? You said it went back to the 1800s.
Yes. Not a lot, but I have spent some time with our county register of deeds, Mark Chilton, who is really a fine historian, particularly of watermills, where the watermills were around Chapel Hill and out in the county. And he's located a number of them, what's left of them or where they were, and what their names were, where Merritt Mill was, that sort of thing. And he's also done a tremendous amount of research on the old fields, capital O, capital F, of Bingham Township and of southeastern Alamance County in the Saxbahaw area. John Lawson in 1701 noted how agriculturally developed by the natives that territory was, pretty much the territory between Saxbahaw and on up to Hillsborough.
Was that Hiawassee?
Yes, and Sissipahaw in the case of over closer to Saxbahaw. But he bragged on this area in particular and the quality of the farmlands. And he made it, I think, very clear that this wasn't just something recent, like lightning had burned out a patch and the natives were growing some plants in there. This was something of long-standing. And I think you have to guess, because he doesn't know how long that area has been farmed, but it's easy to to guess that it was generations, if not some hundreds of years. I think it was probably more like thousands of years, because we know that the natives were here 12 to 14,000 years, and some believe more than that. But yeah, I started off with that, the old fields, and then Clover Garden to kind of locate us. We're on the sort of the southeastern side of the Porter Tract of the old fields. But Mark has, he's done a big folio-sized book, and he's done a number of books. The one he loaned me to help me historically locate where we were was the Saxapahaw Old Fields, or the Haw River Old Fields.
Close to the intersection of Morrow Mill and 54 is Gold Mine Loop. Could you talk about gold or the lack thereof in the naming of that road?
Yes, I wrote a fair bit about the gold mine in our book, North Carolina, Land of Water, Land of Sky. The gold mine dates to the 1900s, and I forget, I think it might be the Robertson Mine, I think is the name of it. When I first moved out to Bingham Township, Clover Garden, all the old timers out there declared the mine was salted. That is, somebody put out some gold and helped somebody else find it to create the belief that there was actually gold there. We know there was a great gold rush, a great gold field, generally, between Franklin County on down toward Charlotte. Much of the great finds in that 1820s, more or less, time, the Carolina Gold Rush, were down the Reed Gold Mine and down that area almost to Charlotte, around sort of where Meisenheimer is, a little bit to the east of Charlotte and Concord. But our gold mine didn't last very long. A few $100 of gold, whether it was secretly put there or actually came from there, might have come out of the mine. There were a lot of buildings. I went back there many years ago with a man who knew right where everything had been, and he remarked he had just had to redo the siding on his house, so this was at the top of his mind. He said, those buildings, they'd still be here today if somebody had ever painted them, but they rotted away. And all that's back over there now, this is off Gold Mine Road, not Loop. The Loop is to the east of the road. All that's over there now is a bunch of sacks of cement that got wet and set up. About 20 or 30 of them, and they're just down the ravine, and that's about all that's left of the gold mine.
Thank you. Any other online questions? Any other questions in the room? All right, I'll come to you.
Bland, are there any public lands or parks over in this area folks go to? You talk about taking a walk, but is that on privately owned land?
Yes, it's on a set of lanes that Eric Schopler built. He bought the Morrow Farm, one of many, but it was the only one that was for sale at the time. He bought that, and he didn't plat it out like a development. He just, somebody get interested in the land, walk around with him, he'd say, well, okay, he'd just draw a couple lines and carve off 10 acres. And he wanted 10-acre minimums because he wouldn't have to pave the lanes if he kept it 10 or above. So we've walked a lot or some on the Gold Mine Loop. Not lately. That's public road without much traffic on it. But I think where's the nearest park?
Saxapahaw?
Probably Saxapahaw. Saxapahaw is 1 minute closer than Carborough. So the post office at Saxapahaw, where there's never a line, is 1 minute closer than the Carborough post office, where there's always a line. So you see how we make our choices. But I wish there were a park in our immediate area, but that's just the public roads. But plenty of people bicycle out there, and we see lots of people walking the roads, ourselves included. Thank you for asking.
Any other questions?
Well, thanks for visiting with us this afternoon, folks. And we are very lucky in North Carolina, 52,000 square miles, and a lot of it is public trust. An awful lot of it is public trust. And a lot that's not is constitutes preserves. The Nature Conservancy is preserved something like 700,000 acres. And we're friends with many of the other environmental groups. And you know, we have 300 miles of barrier beach, half of which belong to us, half that length. And we have 10,000 miles of interior shoreline. A lot of it's wildlife refuge. So we are lucky to have a lot of land that is that's in our hands. And protecting it is part of our mission here. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Bland, for sharing all your stories and of y'all's stories, and Anne for the amazing photography to back that all up. It's really a gem. Stories of a place so close to where we are right here. And folks who are from here, I've been here almost 30 years, so lots of recognizable places and names that I've seen and iconic spaces. So please join us, those who are in the room in the exhibit hall. We've got books for sale, as I mentioned, have some more conversation with Bland and Anne, and have some snacks. So thank you for joining us on Zoom as well, and have a good evening.